The 580 Sports Talk Chiefs Instant Reaction Post-Game Show is live. Brendan Dworzynski, Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis here with you, recapping the Kansas City Chiefs heading back to the Super Bowl. For the fourth time in 5 years, they defeat the Baltimore Ravens 17-10 in Baltimore. And look, there's a lot to get to from this game. We'll break down all the storylines, all of the magical moments from the beginning of the game, the slugfest that was the end of the game. Maybe the greatest defensive game of Steve Spagnuolo's career, given the team they were playing, the MVP on the other side, the stakes. Many people, it's not just us, believe that this was the true Super Bowl this year in the AFC Championship game. But what an unbelievable accomplishment, guys, for this team to not just get back to a sixth consecutive AFC Championship game, but to win it again for the fourth time in the last 5 tries. Hell, if you even throw in all 6, 4 Super Bowl appearances in 6 tries in 6 years with Mahomes as a starter it's unbelievable. It is truly remarkable in every single sense of the word. And they did it today like they have had to do for so much of the season, Dan, because the offense looked great early, totally hit the skids. They weren't able to get anything going in the second half. And it was the defense that took over and just bullied, aside from a few big plays, but they kept him out of the end zone, except for one play all game long. It was just a miraculous effort by this defense, but by the same token, it's what we've come to expect from this group.
Yeah, it felt like we would see at some point a defensive struggle. It's fun. The offenses both came out and hit on some big plays early on. The Chiefs jumped out. Baltimore tied it up. Kansas City went right back in front. But I felt watching it like the defenses were going to settle in more than the offenses. It's a lot of, sometimes you see games happen the other way around where it's a feeling out process by the offenses and then they hit their stride in the second half. That's kind of what we've seen Chiefs games be over the last 5 years before this one. But we've come to expect now Chiefs games this year being games where it's the opposite, where it's the defense feeling things out, making the adjustments and making play after play after play in the second half. And 2 of the biggest defensive play, I'm going to go out on a limb and call L'Jarius Sneed's goal line strip of Zay Flowers the greatest defensive play in Kansas City Chiefs history. I think that's the greatest defensive play in the history of the franchise right there, because it is a 3-point game with everything to play for. And the offense, like you said, had completely stalled out in the second half. And that was a moment. The great defenses defend every blade of grass. And this Chiefs defense has been great every single step of the way. And that play so emblematic of how the Chiefs have leaned on that group all season long to get to where they are. And the beautiful irony of these 2 things. Number one, all year long, the Chiefs were the team that stepped in it, that committed the killer penalty, that committed the killer turnover, that lost the scoring opportunity, and ended up on the wrong side of some very winnable games during the regular season because of those things. And didn't entirely avoid them in this game. A questionable holding call on Trey Smith, negating a touchdown that could have made it 21-7 before halftime, Chiefs having to settle for a field goal. Tonight, though, it was the Chiefs' defense making those big plays, forcing 3 turnovers. It was the Ravens who lost their cool and committed the brain-dead personal foul penalties, 4 of them in the game. And the other beautiful irony, when you got to finish off a game, when you have to, absolutely have to convert on a 3rd and long to end a game and win a conference championship, who do you call? Of course you call Marquez Valdez-Scantling, right? Today we spell redemption MVS. Beautiful irony in that for the Chiefs. They allow 41 points in 3 playoff games. It's masterwork on defense, and they are riding that defense and Mahomes' brilliance to yet another Super Bowl.
I think when you look at this game, the Chiefs got into the heads of the Ravens, and they were in their heads the whole game. I think from the start, from the headbutt on Kelsey all the way to the very end, they were in their heads the whole game. And I don't think we saw the best version of Lamar that we've seen throughout the rest of the season. I mean, he threw into triple coverage for one thing. It just seemed like the Ravens offensively were one-dimensional in a way. They were either throw with Lamar or run with Lamar. Their running backs, I think I read a stat, got 25 yards on the ground. Baltimore running backs accounted for 25 yards on the ground.
Yeah, they were complete non-factors in this game. And it's a credit to the Chiefs. And I think it is also fair to say, I don't know what the hell Todd Monken was calling for that Baltimore offense today, because it felt like everything was so slow developing. And again, credit to the Chiefs on the back end. L'Jarius Sneed was awesome. Trent McDuffie was awesome. They did an incredible job of covering everybody downfield for Baltimore, and the Chiefs deserve credit for that. But I also think, what the hell were some of those play calls? Why wouldn't you commit more to the run, at least a little bit earlier in the game? Fourth quarter, I get it. You need to move the ball in huge chunks, play after play. It's okay to stop the clock. I understand all of those things. But it was just a bizarre game plan. And Dan, you mentioned this a little bit, and Spencer, you did just a moment ago too. The level of discipline between these two teams, and I'm not the first one to say this. This was all over Twitter during the game. This looked like a team that had been to 3 of the previous 4 Super Bowls, had won the last one, had a coach who, and granted, John Harbaugh's won a bunch too, but not a whole lot recently. This felt like a team that has been there before in the Chiefs, and a team that was playing through a lot of nerves and anxiety in the Ravens. And I think that showed with a lot of those personal foul penalties. Those were, aside from the Roquan Smith one, which was clearly by design, and actually I thought was a genius call from the Baltimore sideline, maybe a little, could have been a little more subtle. But other than that, that was a smart play in the moment. The discipline level was off the charts in favor of the Chiefs. Not even close.
Yeah. You said it perfectly. One team looked like they'd been there before, and one team looked like that was the biggest game of their life. And you said it too, Spencer. Like the Chiefs seemed to enjoy being the instigator a little bit. I haven't seen Travis Kelce that much engaging with the opponent all season long. Like, clearly he relished that, and the Ravens got guys who are more than happy to give it back, and we saw that, and that cost him. Kyle Van Noy with the headbutt cost him 15 yards in a situation where I think the Chiefs at the end of the half were probably going to be content to play it safe and take a touchdown lead into the locker room if they didn't get a big chunk on their first couple of plays. But that 15-yard penalty moved them ahead in a big way, and then all of a sudden the Chiefs end up almost getting 7 out of that drive, and they do get their 3, and it makes it a 10-point game, and that really changed the math at the end of the contest. We got to talk more about this Chiefs defensive performance. I think some of it was a game plan from the Ravens that was weirdly pass heavy. It looked like they were trying to hit on big plays. Like, that was the design. They kept looking for the home run when singles and doubles would have done just fine. Their best drives were where they hit for short gain, short yardage, but man, a lot of deep shots that weren't there. Lamar throwing into triple coverage for his interception. I really, really felt like that was a curious game plan from the Ravens, instead of leaning on their outstanding running game against one of the worst rush defenses in the league, like we've talked about. The running backs, Edwards, Hill, other than in the passing attack, they were a non-factor. That really is bewildering. There are a lot of things about this game where if I were a Baltimore Ravens fan, I don't know when I would get my next good night of sleep. It wouldn't be tonight, I can tell you that.
I've been thinking since we started this, and since you mentioned it, Dan, I can only think of one other play that I would put in the same category as the biggest defensive play in Chiefs history. The only other one that comes to my mind, at least within this era, is Nick Bolton scoring the touchdown last season against Philadelphia in Super Bowl 57, because that was the Eagles scored every single point of that second quarter, except for that one. They had dominated in that quarter, in that game. Nick Bolton scoops up the fumble, takes it back for 6 the other way. But that's it. Like, this is with the Super Bowl on the line. In the moment, the Chiefs were ready for it. And that is the thing that we have been worried about this year, because there had been moments during the regular season. And I think this concern and this criticism was fair, Spencer. The worry that they wouldn't be able to meet the moment, that the penalty, not just penalties, the dumb penalties, the unforced errors, the drops, the turnovers, that something like that would rear its ugly head in the exact wrong moment. But it was the other way around. It was Baltimore that was committing those, and the Chiefs did what their opponents had done to them all season long. They were ready. They were ready to make the right play. They were the disciplined ones making the play. And despite the fact they only scored 17 points in the game and didn't do a whole lot offensively throughout the majority of the back portion of the game, the Chiefs have Mahomes, and we saw it on a couple of those. There's an ambulance outside. Clearly someone is partying a little too hard after the Chiefs advanced to the Super Bowl again, but they had the cheat code. And the number one play I think about when I think of the Chiefs just have the ultimate skeleton key, whatever situation presents itself, they can unlock that. And I said this to you guys earlier in the week. Joe Tooney out. Okay, what are you going to end up doing? Mahomes, first half, might have been first quarter even, scrambling all around, circling all over, back and forth. Play takes forever. Then just right before he gets to the line of scrimmage, little flip, Travis Kelce leans out, picks it up. No one does that. Even Lamar, he might be the only other guy in football who can make a play like that. And we saw that because he had a 13-yard completion to himself in this game and had a couple of other incredible escape routines. But that is the one thing the Chiefs have that nobody else is going to be able to match. So you can't look just at the stats. You can't look just at the final score and say, well, it maybe wasn't Mahomes' best game, because this is more about the defense than the offense. But when the going gets tough, who are you going to pick? You get Mahomes versus the field, every single other player in the NFL. You're taking 15 in red every single time.
I had to, when I was walking out of, or kind of before I muted the TV, somebody on the post-game show, it might have been Boomer, he said, "Welcome to the game manager club, Pat Mahomes." Because that's what he did in the second half. They weren't successful offensively. The Ravens defense had came to play in the second half, made those adjustments that you like to see. But when it really mattered, he found MVS down the field, and MVS made the catch.
MVS, of all people, it's MVS. I saw him trying to adjust his footwork underneath that ball. I thought there was somewhere between a 0 and 0% chance he was going to come down with that thing. And he makes that.
I did not have very high expectations when I saw who was back there. And I was worried when he tumbled down to the ground. I thought, oh man, that thing popped out. There's no way that thing definitely popped out, but credit to him. I begrudgingly will say all the credit in the world to him, because in the biggest moment, he came up with a big play yet again, like he did in the postseason last year. Let's not forget that part of it. Speaking of pass catchers, by the way, Dan, should we talk a little bit about 11 catches, 116 yards and a touchdown for Travis Kelce in the best game he's played all season?
Oh, you want to talk about the greatest tight end alive? The guy who has the all-time record for receptions in the postseason.
Let's be fair. Living or dead. He's the greatest of all time. You can give me Tony G. You can give me Gronk for the peak he had in his brief career. You can give me all sorts of names. Travis Kelce's the greatest to ever do it. The best.
We talk about the guy that was washed up. It was washed up in the middle of the season.
Hey, Clay.
Yeah.
And he's got 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks when it really matters.
Getting open, making contested catches, scoring touchdowns, making guys miss. Just an incredible performance. I think that week 18, getting to not play, helped to reset his battery. He just looks spry. He hadn't looked like this all year. Like the way he's moving, the way he's getting open, the way he's making contested catches, he hasn't looked like this all year. And I think back to that injury he suffered 2 days before the first game of the season. He suffers that injury in practice on Tuesday before the Thursday night opener against Detroit. He misses that game. He has some moments in the first half of the season, but you wonder, did that linger? It was a difficult injury to come back from in a week and a half that he tried to come back from. We are seeing now the best of Travis Kelce. We're seeing the best of all the Chiefs. I mean, this is the best football they played the last 3 weeks. They have not looked better all season long in all 3 phases. And even some of the phases, they were getting beat in the punt game. Baltimore's punter was having a much better day than Tommy Townsend. And then Townsend drops one at the 1 with 10 minutes left to play in the game on a drive where the Chiefs end up getting a stop and that eats 4 minutes off the clock. Like that was an immense play in the game. So all 3 phases, everything's clicking right now. This is what you want to do as a championship level team, peak at the right times. The Chiefs are doing that.
Give me a defensive player, Spencer, who stood out the most to you. I mean, there were so many good individual efforts in this game. Give me someone who really impressed you the most with their individual effort.
Well, I'm not going to pick Snead because he made the greatest play ever in Chiefs history. Drew Tranquil, 8 tackles in the game. And I think Dan said it last week on the show one day that he was going to be, I can't remember which day it was. He said he's going to be key with the injuries that they have. It was Friday.
It's not important who said it or when it was said, but it was me and it was on Friday.
Yeah.
Yes, that did happen.
I think he showed up huge in this ball game, led the team in tackles. And when you're playing a team that has so many dynamic weapons on paper, I guess, because they really all didn't show today. When a guy can lead your team in tackles and he could be the guy that, maybe his name isn't always said throughout the season, I think it's going to be your best. It's got to be the top defensive performer of the day.
My guy Goober Train on YouTube says George Karlaftis, he played his heart out. That was going to be my pick in this game. He was awesome this entire game long, getting the constant pressure. And what did we say earlier in the week, and I believe it came up with Mitch Holthus as well when you guys spoke to him on Thursday. We talked about it early in the week on Friday's show as well, leading up to this game. You don't need to sack Lamar Jackson to make an impact in this game. You don't have to get sacks. And yet the Chiefs did, and were still able to create enough pressure to throw them off balance. And it was the complementary football on the defensive side. It was the fact that they were able to generate pressure with the fact that the secondary was locking those dudes down all game long, aside from Zay Flowers for a number of plays, who then ended up making two of the dumbest mistakes of the entire game in a game filled with them. I still cannot believe that people were upset about the personal foul when Mahomes got hit right on the chin by was that Clowney at the time? And
it was Clowney.
Yeah. Like, guys, that's getting called every single time. The headbutt, Spencer, you mentioned it earlier. Kyle Van Noy getting in Travis Kelce's face. Dude, he couldn't have possibly been more baited if he was dressed up like a fish in a tank with a lure in front of him. Like, Kyle Van Noy has played since 1983. How do you not know what another guy is doing? How are you so completely oblivious to the state of the game, to who you're playing, to who number 87 on the other team is, that you're going to get in his face and hit your head against his? Baltimore deserved to lose this game because of their stupidity in and of itself. You want to talk about them getting outplayed? Sure. But they played such a stupid football game, Dan. I couldn't believe it. And I know I'm rehashing a point we've already brought up about the discipline and the Chiefs having been there before and all that, but I could not believe it. The Chiefs, all they had to do in this game was not act like complete morons and they were going to win, because Baltimore couldn't do that.
Yeah, Baltimore will be kicking themselves. They have nobody to blame but themselves, I think, for the way this game unfolded, because they made the adjustments on defense. They were tremendous. Like, the Baltimore defense at its best, when I've watched them this year overwhelm great teams, not good teams, great teams that they played, they looked like they had 15 guys on the field. Like, they get downhill and they don't miss tackles and they're in every running lane, and they choked the Chiefs out in the second half. It was an outstanding final performance as the defensive coordinator for future Seahawks head coach Mike Macdonald. I thought he pushed all the right buttons in the second half and really did an outstanding job. And there was a whole lot that the Chiefs could do against them in the second half. That was the best defense in the league, playing like the best defense in the league. Forced 5 punts in the second half. The Ravens could not have done more on that side of the ball. You hold the Chiefs 17 points, it's a game you got to win. And they didn't win it because they turned it over 3 times, twice in the red zone. They had killer penalties. They had a game plan that was just too greedy. I don't know how to describe what that was from Todd Monken, but just going for the home run every single time. It was that was something else. The Ravens will be kicking themselves. They've got no one to blame but themselves. A guy Schaefer on Facebook wants to know who we got in the other
buddy
game.
Schaefer.
Oh, it's your guy. Okay, so for those who are watching this and not watching the game, Jameson Williams just took a reverse for a touchdown, and inside of 2 minutes, the Lions are leading the 49ers 7-0 in the NFC Championship game. I think 49ers are still going to win that game, but I'll tell you what, their road gets a lot tougher when they have to play from behind, which is something they haven't done a lot and don't do particularly well. So we'll see how this one goes moving forward. Either way, I think it's a satisfying matchup for the Chiefs. I think if you're the Chiefs, you want the better team. That's been the 49ers. Or you get a chance at some week 1 revenge against the Lions, a team you probably should have beaten on your home floor, if not for the antics of former Chief, we'll go ahead and call him that, Kadarius Toney.
I'll be honest with you. Answer the question, does not matter. Chiefs are winning either way. I'm not going to be as aggressive as I was before Super Bowl 55, which clearly did not work out well for the Kansas City Chiefs that year when I was extremely confident, but they're better than the 49ers. They're better than the Lions. And by the way, Devin Hester once returned the opening kickoff of a Super Bowl for a touchdown, and the Bears did diddly poo after that. So I'm not all that worried about Jameson Williams having one big play on a trick play. If you have to resort to trickery, you don't deserve to win anyway. That means that you don't have confidence in your team to actually win a game. So good for you, Dan Campbell. You don't think you're good enough to win a game against a real team, you fraud. Anyway, all right.
Howard Schnellenberger with the take there.
No, I got the 49ers at this point.
Don't give me this BS, like, feel-good story. Get them out of my face. No one should ever feel good for the Detroit Lions of anyone. Mismanage your team for 80 years. You luck into one good season with a top 18 quarterback, and all of a sudden you feel good for them. Give me a break. We should be ridiculing teams for being terrible for their whole history. Anyway, beside that, shout out to Tobin Rote. Spencer, let's get a final thought on this game. We got to save at least a little bit for sports talk coming up on Monday, but give us a final takeaway thought from this game. Chiefs knocking off the Ravens.
My final takeaway is not about the Chiefs, because we know who the Chiefs are. Everybody knows who the Chiefs are. My final take is Lamar. He might be about to be a 2-time MVP, but he clearly can't win the big games. That's my thought.
Look, I will say this, and we'll talk more about this coming up on 580 Sports Talk on Monday. I like Lamar. I like Lamar a lot. He deserved to be the MVP this year. He had a great season. He's had a great career. But if you have an agenda against this man, ooh boy, you are going to have a fun week this week, because it was not all his fault. I do not think it is all his fault. But these are the things that quarterbacks get judged on. Exactly. These are the things quarterbacks get judged on. And, well, one way or the other, it's going to not be a pretty week for Lamar Jackson. Dan, your final thoughts.
It was James Brown quoting The Wire at the start of the postgame show, and he used one particular quote from The Wire, which is the legendary HBO show about West Baltimore. I'm going to use a different quote from The Wire that I think fits this game. You come at the king, you best not miss. The Chiefs are kings of the AFC again. The Ravens will never get a better shot than this. And maybe the rest of the NFC isn't going to get a better shot than this for a while, because with the offensive skill talent on hand, there is a case that this might be the worst Chiefs team of the next few years. If they're able to keep this defense largely intact and Mahomes gets better and better with age, this was your shot, AFC. This was the shot. You had him on the road twice. Heard Mahomes couldn't win a home game. You come at the king, you best not miss.
Final thought for me. I can't believe I'm going to do this. You've heard my thoughts for many years at this point on Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And look, I said earlier I was begrudgingly going to give him credit for the game-winning catch, and it was a great throw by Mahomes, and yes, it ended up being a good catch by MVS. Marquez Valdes-Scantling just put something on Twitter that, unfortunately, if you're a fan of Detroit, you're a fan of San Francisco, or you're just a Chiefs hater, as far as I'm concerned, is about to guarantee that the Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl. Do you guys know what they call M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore? Do you know what the nickname of that stadium is?
A bank.
They call it the Bank.
Yeah.
Right? Who's the most famous Chiefs fan outside of Taylor Swift?
Infamous, you mean?
Yeah, maybe the most infamous. Yeah, gentleman by the name of Chiefsaholic, Xavier Babidar. Well, MVS just tweeted this. You can see it on the screen right now. He tweeted at the bank with 2 pictures of Chiefsaholic. It's over. I'm sorry, folks. It's over. There's no coming back from that one, no matter who you are. We're going to break this game down in full, every single detail of it, the matchup for Super Bowl 58, other lingering thoughts from championship weekend, all coming up Monday on 580 Sports Talk. Plus, we'll get a little reaction from the college hoops weekend as well. Plenty of big news. I'm sure we'll have more coaching news come Monday, too. So we will be breaking all of that down on 580 Sports Talk coming up on Monday from 2 until 6. But until then, for Dan Lucero, for Spencer Dupuis, I am Brendan Dworzinski. This has been your Chiefs Instant Reaction post-game show following a 17-10 win over the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk all about it coming up with you guys